What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It's Milton Spence coming to you live here once again at the Well-Rounded Coaches Corner. I have here with me Miss Sheila Bryan. She is blessing us with her presence and with her knowledge, and today the topic is going to be on authenticity, the importance of it, why we need more of it. Ms. Bryan, I'm turning the mic over to you now. Please let us know how to get in touch with you and what we need to do in order. Just give us a rundown of who you are and how we can get in touch with you.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on your platform. It is always a privilege for me to be able to collaborate with great thinkers, thought leaders like yourself. My name is Sheila Bryan, as you mentioned, and I am a licensed life coach, mindset coach. I am a mother of four. I've trained in corporate America, and most importantly, I am walking and living in my purpose right now. I love doing what I do, which is to help women and men walk in their purpose as well through leadership, skills development, mindset, leadership development, as well as emotional intelligence development. I've been doing what I do for about a good 7 years, but I think I have been doing it way before. I just did not know I was doing it, which is a big difference. I'm sure you know how that feels. You know, you just feel like you're doing your life works for so long, but over time you kind of recognize that it's more meaningful and more purposeful when you see and hear people lives change because they cross path with you. So in order to get in touch with me, I am on all social media handles. My first name is Sheila, last name is Bryan, and that's how I'm found, just easy on any social media handle.
Oh, it's very easy to get in touch with Ms. Bryan. That's pretty awesome. So look, I'm going to dive into it. I like to really get to it and get to the meat of the conversation because when we talked before, what dawned on me is that, we have a lot of people out here and like yourself, I talk to people and I notice that authenticity is something that they really struggle with because it seems as if they feel like as if they have to fit in some type of box or some type of standard, right? In order to not only be accepted by me as somebody who doesn't even know them from left or right, or just to be accepted by people as they walk out into these environments of wherever it is that they go or whoever it is that they interact to, especially on social media. It seems like they have to portray a certain person in order to be accepted. So what I wanted to ask you was, first and foremost, could you tell us what is your definition of authenticity?
This is a great question, Milton. To be honest, I also, over the years, clearly in my adult life, I also struggled with my authenticity, which was my identity. It was really figuring out who I was. For society, for some reason, still tries to penalize people, even as adults, because they are not quite sure who they are, what they're supposed to be doing. So there are people who conflicted with who they really are based on what their current roles in corporate America or their laboring jobs and skill sets, or maybe parental or any nationality, anything that you can think that attributes to a person's identity. If they're not quite solid in who they are, they're going to likely lack authenticity. So most of the times we don't know who we are because we're still trying to find out what are we supposed to be doing? Are we connected to something in particular? So I learned over the years that my authenticity came from me just being unapologetic about being the person that I am, how I think, how I feel, how my opinion. And once I became really confident that I am an opinionated, I'm a very vocal person, I'm fun to be around, and I am very open-minded, that's really where I began to embrace myself and just to be okay with that and just recognize not everyone will like me, not everyone will agree with me, and just hold on to that and just always be that person no matter where I go. Because once my mentor years ago told me, Sheila, wherever you go, there you are. That hit me.
Wow.
It hit me really hard.
I like that. Wherever you go, that's where you are. That's pretty much that's very true. It's like as a man thinketh, so is he. And
Absolutely.
so many things I can think about that say the exact same thing. But so you defined authenticity and you gave a pretty elaborate description of it. So that means you yourself, you said you still have some things that even in your right now, like you're still, I guess you want to say, finding your way to who you are and what you're all about and all of those things. Let me ask you something. As you're on that journey, what is the beautiful parts of yourself that you have seen that have made you actually want to drive more towards being even that much more of yourself?
Wow. Awesome question. I mean, that's a really deep question, and you can layer it actually. I would say that the journey that I've been on of self discovery was realizing what I'm capable of doing, the impacts that I've made, rather not being grand scale level, like someone who has an extreme great platform, like an Oprah Winfrey, for example, but just knowing that where I'm at, I've been able to do something great for one person, or an example for my own children. That has been my greatest journey, really revealing myself to myself through the everyday things that I do. Just reading. I read a lot. I'm just a lover of books. And I do a daily practice and a daily habit of gratitude as well. So just that journey alone of self-discovery has been probably the best that I can honestly tell you about myself.
And I tell you what's beautiful about that is that you have given yourself that freedom to do it, to figure out who you are and what you're all about, and you've given yourself the opportunity to accept it, right? Because you could even see who you are and still not accept who you are,
Right.
even though you see exactly what you're seeing. And what I love about authenticity the most is that you get an opportunity to accept who you are. And it's not that you push that on anybody or try to make them accept you. It's just that you are exactly who you are. And you
Yes.
normally or naturally can tell if you mesh with that other person or not.
That's it.
Because
That's it.
I've come across many people who have not necessarily been 100% themselves. And normally in that situation, you can feel it because you're like, well, what's going on? Like, there's no congruency, or there's no anything. There's nothing that's meshing between us, and it kind of makes you like, man, this person could actually be pretty awesome if they would just like let their hair down.
Well, I would say to that we have to understand. I mean, I've learned to understand. I would like to just always speak for myself and come from my paradigm of growth. What stretched me, what has taught me, what I have lived through, and collectively what I've learned from other people. Because I've been in the coaching business for some years now, and I have really picked the brains of the greatest, and I have helped pull out of some of the people that I have coached out of the gutter. So I have endeavored, so to speak, with the minds of every single person when it comes to men and women. And what I can tell you is that not everyone will be open to let their hair down. Not every one of us wear our emotions on our sleeves. And there's something that's beautiful about chemistry with people. What's beautiful with chemistry is that if you come across someone who's not necessarily out of the gate open with you, it gives you an opportunity to check yourself. Are you going to begin to have expectation? Should this person just, respond to you the way you respond to them? I mean, that's a law, it's reciprocity. However, it's always going to come with a temperature, a temperament. Can this person really feel trustworthy? And do you know this other person? We live really always having an expectation, even of strangers. Rather everyone that you've met before, including you and I, before we become friends, we were strangers. But there is something that maybe is just that out of the gate connection that it is very rare, but because sometimes it's intentional. We all have that type of, judgment towards another person because they don't respond to us the way we want to. It happens to me all the time. When I go in certain public places, someone will ask me, why you look so mad? I am not really mad. It's just maybe lost in my thoughts. So maybe thinking or reflecting, I could have forgotten something, but that person whose face is pretty much engaged with mine and I'm in my own thoughts immediately responds to me with, why are you mad? So if that makes any kind of sense to you, we really have to work on that, reflecting ourselves upon people, particularly our thoughts, thinking or maybe assuming that person don't like me or this person is not vibing with me. It's not necessarily the case. It's always a need to be invited. We all need to be. I don't like no one imposing on my personal space, so we need to work on being invited in a person's space rather to always imposing by just always making an assumption, and that's what comes out of our mouth. The way we're thinking about that individual is what really comes out translated into words. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, you're making 100% sense. A lot of sense. So let me ask you this, if you would tell me about yourself when there's a time that you can draw back to right now that you've suffered with being inauthentic and the effect that it may have had on yourself or the person or whatever the case may be, the effect that it had.
That's a deep question. Again, we're going to peel the layers. We're talking about being authentic, so I'm going to be as transparent as I can, because I think that's what's gained for me. I've gained a lot of trust within the people that I've done business with, because over the years I have broken out of that lack of authenticity, because I lacked a lot of things, which was confidence. I lacked a lot of self-respect, a lot of trust. So when we live in a space of lack, we come from that unauthentic space. We really come across that way. And if I wasn't really filling my tank up, like I have been doing over the years, I wouldn't be confident in who I am. So I remember one of my experiences that continued to reciprocate, and it was just a perpetuating experience in different relationships where I lacked confidence as myself. I wasn't really confident as a woman that I have all it took for a man to respect me, to honor me, to choose me. I dealt with men who weren't really always faithful, who weren't always, didn't always treat me right, because my lack of confidence, my lack of trust in myself, the lack that I had in myself, that lack translated in tolerance and acceptance of things that were done to me by those relationships. And I often wonder, there were 3 people in a row over the years that I had the same experiences with. These men would lie to me. They'll tell me things that I knew in my heart that wasn't truthful. Like, they were just telling me anything. Like, a friend will say, lie and make it sound fly. And I realized that practically I was not having an authentic relationship, because I myself wasn't authentic. And when I got out of one relationship and got into the other, it seemed like it was just a mirror. Same relationship, just a different man. And when it went to the third relationship, sorry, I'm hoping you cannot hear that much background noise. But as I got into my third relationship, I realized, wait a minute. Now I had to sit down and I had to now self-assess. I had to do what you call inventory of my emotions, inventory of my standards, inventory of myself. And when I tell you, it was one of the lowest places that I could have sat down with myself to have an inventory, I knew there was so much work that I needed to be done before I get into another relationship. And that has led me to be on this journey of repairing, restoring, and resetting a lot of things. And that's the reason why I said I remain single, because the journey to restore and repair, reset, required a lot of me just learning myself. If that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think what's most impressive to me in that situation, honestly, is the fact that you were put into a space where you could have settled. You could have just been with those gentlemen, allowed them to treat you any type of way, and you could have just settled. And the most dangerous thing that I've seen that we do as people is we settle. I have I've settled. I'm just not one of those people who are going to do it anymore. And that's because I've started to realize the greatness that I can have in this life if I go after the greatest things that I would really like to have, whether it be out of myself, whether it be out of a relationship, whether it be whatever I want and really, really want, or struggle to get, or really, really work hard to get. I can have it if I believe, and not just believe, but if I truly work to attain it, and I truly work to go after it.
True.
Because, especially when it comes to me, because I have the tools. I have the tools already within me, just like you did. And for you to sit down and try to decipher what your tools are, decipher who you are and what you're about, that takes a level of maturity and a level of steadiness that sometimes some of us do not have. And what I appreciate the most is to hear a person who has gone through it and is able to talk about it and tell us, look, guys, it ain't easy, but I've done it and I can do it, and so can you. So moving to the next thing, let me ask you this. What is a time in your life that you can say where you've kind of answered it a little bit, answered this question a little bit, but I'm going to jump into this. A time in your life when you have really been not just down to your last leg, but what happens when you have to be authentic about those things? Because we talked about some positive things, right? But what happens when you have to be authentic about those things that are necessarily negative as far as what you're feeling or how you feel towards another person or whatever the case may be? What happens and how do you handle those situations? How do you protrude those onto another person?
Great question. Negative feelings.
Hey y'all, we're sorry about that. We're back. Just lost connection real quick. You know how it goes. Everybody's on the server. Everybody's at home, so y'all are using up all the bandwidth. But nevertheless, here we are. So the question was let us know at a time when we are having to express something negative, quote unquote, to a person or something we know that might hurt their feelings, yet and still we want to tell them the truth. How do we go about that when it comes to and staying authentic? Because sometimes people they skate around it or try to put a little sugar here, a little dab of salt here, and a little dab of this here, instead of coming out and actually telling the person. How would you suggest that we handle that?
Great question. And I'll tell you that over the years, just like everyone else, I'm pretty sure we all at some point in life we've lost some friendships or we've ruined some potential relationships because of the inability to communicate, inability to project, inability to just be mindful of the other person. We are senders and receivers of information. And again, just personal journey of mine over the years, I was just terrible at communicating. I was that person who just say outright what I'm thinking, right? Not thinking as well about you as the individual who's receiving, my message. And I knew that when I wasn't getting the responses that I needed or wanted, or people were just coming back and saying, you know what, I kind of like you, but I don't like the way you deliver. I knew that was how I was being portrayed. So I had to work on that. And beginning, maybe 3-4 years ago, I started reading a book that changed my life. And it's called 7 Levels of Intimacy by Matthew Kelly. And what he talks about in this book, as he was breaking down the levels of intimacy, which is not necessarily the physical intimacy, it's just broken down in layers. He said that one of the first levels of intimacy was cliche, or the relationships that are cliche. Cliche simply means how you doing, good morning, hi and bye. And there's no depth to it. And then the next level that goes from that was that level of opinion, right? So the opinion relationship level is where you are able, or you have gained some form of trust with this individual, where you can just say, hey, you know what, Milton, I think you're a really great guy, but you may want to tone down a little bit, or you may want to do such a thing, or I believe. So you begin to give your opinion. You begin to now share your input with that individual. However, you first have to know, can I say something to you? So again, it brings it back to the invitation. Because if I say to you, Milton, well, you know what, I don't really like the way you come across today. It's different from saying, Milton, do you mind if I share something with you that I observed? Completely different responses. And it's the same thing that I'm trying to say to you. But again, it is my personal journey on me just wanting to be the best version of myself, because I lost some amazing relationships. I lost real great, friendships as well. So because I knew that there was something I was doing, I needed to work on that. And again, just reading helped me break free from that negativity, because I was a carrier of negativity, whether it was just the way I approached or the way I delivered, it was negative. Not to mean that I was a negative person, but my negative exchange with the other party was really always, again, turn off. So that's my experience with just delivering negativity or receiving negativity, and just working on it to doing better by just saying, may I share something with you, or do you mind if I say something to you that I absorb? Make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I tell you what, I've also had that same experience where, I've been in a position to share my thoughts or share, this and this and that. And, sometimes I might not come off 100% correct, right? Because I'm still growing. But necessarily what I like to do all the time is make sure I try to preface it, or I talk to the person and let them know how I am as a man or a person, period, right? Try to let them know how I am, so that when I am speaking to them, they understand the place it's coming from. If I'm talking to them about something that has to do with them, right, as far as personality, mentality, something they're doing, that's on a personal relationship. Somebody who I do not know, yes, I normally will take that approach that you said. Hey, would you mind if I share something with you real quick? If you don't mind, I know we don't know each other, but I really want to talk to you about something, and just kind of tell you something real quick, if you don't mind. And then we just go from there. But me personally, I find it very hard not to sometimes let it all hang out, if that makes sense.
I mean, of course, we are work in progress. The greatest room is room for improvement. And I sit and I bask in that room on a daily basis, because that is the space in which I feel human. It's the space in where I feel and believe that I am sharpening my skills every single day. I'm doing better as a mom, as a woman, as a friend, in all arenas that I play, in all the hats that I wear. I know that I have to be able to work on that, diligently, because I don't really, and I'll be honest with you, I don't care to be liked by everybody, because my personality type is what you call a straight shooter. I'm an alpha female. I believe that I'm very confident in the things that I'm speaking about, because I stay within my lane. I don't cross lanes, because I'm never really trying to race with no one. I have my own race to run. So ultimately, my goal is to make sure that if someone does feel that I per se have offended them, rubbed them the wrong way, then I communicate that. I ask, well, what did I say, or how did you feel that I come out? And always walk away from that individual with a peace and agreement. We had some rough starts, but if we can sever ways, whether it's permanently or temporarily, we can sever ways. I know for a fact that I've done my best to make sure that I walk away from people leaving a good impression on myself. Even if the first wasn't the great one, at least the idea that they kind of understand that I'm just that type of person. They know how to approach me, they know how to deal with me, and I'm just as sweet as a mango in season. But just know that if your approach isn't right, then my response will be just about the same. It will be reciprocated, because my personality is that. But I do it respectfully. I think that as we're having a conversation, Milton, about authenticity, it's just embracing. If that's who you are, straight shooter, you don't beat around the bush, and that's who you are. Usually people like that, we never really get appreciated for being honest. We're always going to get the bad stick end of the tail. We're going to always be getting these amazing lists of critical labeling, because no one wants to be told like it is. People want to have that sugarcoating conversation, and I don't like that conversation, because you're not helping me grow. You're not stretching me. You're not being honest. And if I know I'm wrong and you haven't called me out on it, I can call you my friend, because I know I'm wrong.
And that's the hard part is, for the longest growing up, my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother, all kind of like straightforward, they just boom. So when I go out into the regular world with everybody else, right, and I'm just giving it to them the same way. I'm looking around like, well, I mean, I guess I might as well, and I'm wondering like, why are you mad? Like, because I've been receiving it my entire life. Like, why are you so upset? And I started to realize something though that really helped me when it came to other people. I started being that much more straightforward with myself. And when I was that much more straightforward with myself, I started to really understand why it would mean what it means for somebody else to feel that in the moment. Because I might tell myself something like, Milton, you self-sabotage almost every situation you get into. That was hard for me to say to myself and to understand that I am literally killing every opportunity that I had at the moment, and the only reason I was doing it because I was afraid of my own shadow. That is not something that I wanted to tell myself, but I literally had to look in the mirror and say, you're scary. You're scared of
Right.
everything. You're
That's right.
so afraid of everything. You have no reason to be afraid anymore. If you're gonna do it, just go ahead and do it and stop being so scary. And as a guy, as a man, you beat your chest and you do all of this and you with your boys and you want to seem like you have that bravado. But the truth is, you might not, and you just have to fess up. So I started to understand that. So when I approach people, I always have this ability now to almost, in a sense, have that person feed into my personality. And then they understand that when I come to them or when I say something to them, it's from a good place.
Absolutely.
It's not just a place of criticism, it's constructive. I'm critical because I'm not just looking for something wrong. I'm naturally critical, so I'm going to see the things that are maybe off. And so when I come to you with that said criticism, it's because I want to see that thing turn around or see that thing get in place. And I think what really happens is that we get into a spot or space, but we start to go after what's in people's spirits versus just the face, the surface things. So
I agree.
So when we go what's in them that is deeper than the surface things, it is what's within them that comes out and that is fighting back versus them, because they'll know that you're telling them the truth.
Absolutely.
But
I've been there.
they don't understand why they fight back against it.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, the idea is that here's something that I've learned, that once you know the truth, you got to do something about it. So it is easier for people to live in denial, because being in denial, you don't have to be accountable. And that's just one of my real understandings of dealing with people on a regular basis, is just to know that I am always going to find myself reflected in people, whether it is, at work, my children, colleagues. It doesn't matter. Any environment that I place myself in, there's going to be a likelihood of me being reflected in one or many areas of myself. So I noticed my friendship. There's a friend of mine and we had a conversation. I mean, that's because we have reached levels of intimacy where we were able to get to that genuine place of, hey, just tell me if something is wrong or if I'm doing something wrong or whatever, just tell it to me. But I realized that over the last couple of weeks, I began to feel very irritable by my friend. He was irritating my spirit. And why was he irritating me? Because every conversation we had was it was like the redundancy of what he didn't like or what was bothering him. And because that began to feel weary to me, I had to say, friend, I think that you might need to start really checking where you are in life, because what you're doing is that you're bringing to me a dead body. It's like I feel like I'm carrying a dead body with you and for you. And because I treasure our friendship, because I appreciate him as a friend, I asked him, if you don't mind, can I just share this with you, right? So I know I've had friends who I did that to, but they never were honest with me, Milton. They were never transparent enough. They were never authentic with themselves and our friendship to say, hey, Sheila, maybe you need to check yourself, about these relationships that you keep going on that are just the same type of man, or because it's a type of man. It's not the same man, but it's a type of man. And had they had told me something for me to kind of assess, I probably would have worked on this long time ago. But I kept those friendships and I kept those people who told me what I wanted to hear. And they felt like that was the way to keep our friendship going. But as I grew, Milton, I had to grow out of those friendships and those people, because I realized that they were not genuine, because you cannot feel courageous enough to call me out when I am not doing or saying or being who I'm supposed to be, because you see greater in me, because you know what I'm capable of. So just being able to, and I'm talking about those relationships or those people in your life that you spend time with because you choose to. So yes, the people that don't know you, don't know me, that we may just have that high and by interaction with, they may not feel any type of way about telling you or calling you out or anything, because they don't have any basis for it. But I just wanted to kind of insert that, because it's very important that we can have that type of openness and transparency with our friends to say, listen, friend, I'm a bit tired of you coming at me with the same exact drama, issue, problem, whatever that might be. And I love you enough to say, work on that because it's affecting me. And I believe that if I am working on myself and you being my friend, seeing me do that, reading books and attending conferences and doing like what you're doing with me now, it's just, collaborating and working with things that are more progressive to bring about change, then that person is stagnant, and by all means they're an anchor to you. So you got to be able to walk away. It don't matter if it's a 20-year friendship, you have to be able to walk away when they feel like an anchor.
That is one of the toughest things that I've noticed anybody has to do is walking away. I call it the art of no. I mentioned it in my last podcast, that the art of no, or the art of goodbye. It's something I had to learn to master myself. But going into loving yourself, right? I've said this two ways, and I'm going to say it to you. I tell people to love yourself means that you're willing to do whatever it takes for another person, but you're also willing to do what it takes for yourself. And what that means is, when you're willing to do what it is for another person, we always know what that means. What I mean for yourself is, like, let's just say you have the opportunity to actually hurt someone, and you could. Do you love yourself enough? Not just loving that person enough, but do you love yourself enough not to allow yourself to do that in order to harm someone else? Like, do you care for yourself enough? So I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of love? And not just in a romantic way, but let's just talk about loving yourself. Just to make it more specific. What is your breakdown of loving yourself, and how would someone go about realizing that they either have love for themselves, or how to get back to loving themselves? What would be your rundown of that?
Well, that's a real loaded question.
I know, I'm coming with them.
Yes, and I can appreciate the question, because this is the best time of my life to talk about love, and especially loving myself, because I believe in what I interpret love is just a sense of tranquility, a sense of peace, a sense of peace, understanding of who you are, where you are in life. And not attaching that to anything that's material, not attaching that to the paradigms or perceptions of other people. Having love for yourself, or just knowing what love means, is just being able to just know that you are okay, and that you're flawed, and that you are needed. That your presence is not a mistake or accidental, but rather is a purpose presence. And not attaching that to anything that anyone around us is saying or doing. So my love for myself, is that love in which I can sit in quietness, sit still, and I can enjoy my own company. I can have me a glass of wine, I read a book, I watch some funny videos. So now I spend that just enough amount of quality time with myself, to where I can now give that sense of same companionship, joy, serenity to another human being, whether are my children, a friend, a colleague, my staff at my office. So when I can really just be completely in a holistic space, where I'm not sitting with judgment, or I'm not sitting with guilt, or I'm not entertaining, those real reviews of what could have been done, or what didn't get done, but rather just be grateful in that space. Appreciate that space that I'm in, and just really have that replay of, what it is, literally what it is, and I can be okay with that. That's my form, or my interpretation of love for myself, and the one that I can give on to others who are in my space.
It is so important to be able to have a relationship with yourself, the way you described it. I remember the first time I went to the movies by myself, I was shocked, at myself, because I was like, wow, I knew I wanted to take that step, but I did it. And I was just like, I actually enjoy my company, I actually enjoy myself. And I started to realize that if you don't know, if you know who you are, number one, you know who you are not. And if you don't know who you are, you have no idea, who you are. And I think what happens is this. Some people get to know parts of themselves, and they start to believe that they have it all the way figured out. And so what ends up happening is they actually end up missing the greatest parts of themselves. So they end up loving themselves, right? Partially. So they end up missing out on the fullness of loving themselves. So I've noticed some people, when they slip back into, or not just back into, if they do something that seems to be off from that characteristic or whatever they built up in their head of who they are now,
Yeah.
they automatically think, well, I don't love myself, or I'm depressed, or I'm down. It's like, no, you just didn't get a chance to know who you are fully. And what I've also realized is this: I've talked to some married couples who have been married for ages, and they're happily married and they love each other, like really love each other. And what I've asked them is this: what is it about your relationship? I asked one couple, what is it about your relationship that's helped you guys keep going? The husband blurted out, oh, I just learn new things about her every day. It's like she's just such a dynamic person. I learned so much about her. I've seen stuff in her that she hasn't even seen in herself. And the
Right.
wife second that, she was like, yeah. She said, what we do is we just stay interested in each other, and we really stay connected. We really stay interested in each other. And that said something to me, that interest, the interest portion, I feel like we could have so many distractions and so many things
Yes.
that take the interest away, that we're not even interested in ourselves, but yet and still we say, I know who I am. Well, do you really? Are you really interested in yourself to really get deep down to who and what you are? So let me ask, I'm saying all that to get to a question. Of course.
Shoot away.
Of course, of course. Now talk to me about interest. How do you stay interested in yourself?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Because what I've learned about just continuing to evolve as a woman is that I've realized that every day I like something different, right? As I grow older and having, and again, this is my life because for me, growing up with my kids, I mean, I have a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And just having those, those four human beings in my daily space, it kind of there's things that my son introduces me to that I never thought I liked. My son likes movies that are very action driven. Sometimes they seem a bit gruesome, and when I'm watching movies with him, he'll be like, oh mom, it's not that bad, right? So he kind of helps me learn about myself, that I can adjust, that I can really allow myself to just watch a movie that may seem graphic and not be spooked about it. So when I'm by myself, however, I find myself really reflecting. I go back and something that my 17-year-old asked me 2 nights ago, and it was just, I was perplexed at first. Why would she ask me such deep, profound question? She asked, Mom, if you could talk to the 17-year-old you, what would you say to her? This is my 17-year-old
Wow.
talking and asking me this profound question. I mean, they're products of me. They're my children. We have those levels of conversation. I encourage book reading and as well emotional intelligence. I encourage the very same personal growth that I go on at their tender age. I believe is critical. And that was one of my answers to her. I answered honestly, if I had someone when I was 17 who taught me about self-love, who taught me about my beauty, my standards, and taught me about me, and perhaps to understand that so young, a lot of the mistakes that I made growing up, I probably would have never made them. But my journey is already written, and I did what I did. I went through what I went through, and I've learned what I've learned. But I felt really encouraged just to let her know that that 17-year-old me and the 37-year-old me today are two beautiful people who have met again. We've met again. And she was merely that reflection of me meeting my 17-year-old self. It was very emotional. I'm sure you can understand where the conversation is going.
Yep.
Because having children, and you think about your childhood, you often hear that we're children having adult experience. And impartially that could be true, because as adults, we still don't know everything. Every day we're learning. Every day we're making mistakes. And the pain is really what creates the change. We respond to pain very quickly. Rather, when we are comfortable, we don't. Again, conformity is a very dangerous space and a very dangerous paradigm to come from. So just doing things daily to learn about myself through my kids, or exploring the thoughts of my childhood and my young years of who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, am I doing those things, is how I remain interested in who Sheila is.
Man, let me tell you, as you were saying that, I started thinking back to what I would tell myself at 17, and man, oh my gosh, I would say so much to that young guy, man. I mean, he was just now embarking on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And the things that I know now, oh my goodness. But at the same time, I say, I don't know if I would tell him not to experience. I would tell him not to do some things, but I also would tell him to do some things. That, you know what I mean? I
Absolutely.
would say
Enjoy and have
don't
fun.
do this, but do this,
Right.
and make sure you live, and make sure that man, you got me thinking. I'm gonna have to think about that. I might have to write something down about that.
Looks awesome. I mean, look,
Seriously.
then we're off to a great start. Today's conversation, we're off to a good start, and that's really the privilege of being able to be in this particular setting where I can have conversations, dialogue, and obviously receive and as well as give, because that space in which I was in. Now that you're thinking about it, you will get into that space when you think about it. What could you have told your 17-year-old self? And most importantly, forgive your 17-year-old self. And that was one of the first things I responded to her was, first of all, I'm going to forget that 17-year-old was naive, and I'm going to forgive her for being naive, because at the end of the day, a lot of them, even today, I'm 37, but I'm still making mistakes as if I was perhaps 17. Things that you would think, oh, she's so smart, she's so intelligent, and she's so pretty. I don't know that those things are factors to prevent mistakes. As like, putting, perhaps, let's say you want to prevent falling, you're more than likely are going to make sure that you do everything within your means to not fall off a chair if it has 3 legs and it's supposed to have 4. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's an obvious potential accident. So at 37, I can't foresee potential accidents. And one of those, not necessarily an accident in this case, Milton, but more so a failed friendship or failed relationship. You're not going to be able to foresee that, because the most important thing that we give or go into in friendships or establishing new relationships is trust. And when that trust is broken, or that trust is tampered with, then you can't really feel guilty when you've done the best that you can. So I still feel like that 17-year-old girl who I'm just trusting like that 17-year-old girl, and I don't know how to shake her. I mean, she's matured, she has been shaped through life, but I'm still that girl who just likes people, who is okay with people. And I see the best and the good in people until they show me otherwise. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I always say people are my family until they tell me otherwise. Everybody's my family until they say something else. And if you tell me you don't want to be in my family, hey, all right, cool. I
And
guess
that's
we just
okay.
weren't meant.
And I've also spoken to quite a few married couples, and I've learned some really great, valuable things as well, as far as what they have done to keep their relationships, 40 years, is just knowing out of the beginning of the relationships that they knew there were 2 different people. You're coming as one because you're coming as one to be able to respect the decisions that you make together as if one made it. That was one of the greatest seeds that was sown for me, was, this 40 plus year married couple said, listen, if my husband makes a decision, and he says that we're going to sell 1 car and we're going to be down to 1 car, guess what? That decision becomes one decision in the household. It's not a tug and war and a back and forth. It is a decision that was made, but collectively it's a beneficial decision because they're cutting back on bills and expenses. So that's something that I've found over the years to be as well a challenge when it comes down to people and the relationships that I'm in with people, whether it's a romantic or just a friendship. It's just being able to be respected for the decisions that I make. When I don't feel respected for the decisions that I make, I begin to really look differently at that person.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about reciprocation. I'm all about togetherness. And I found that is one of the hardest things to grasp when it comes to other people, because some people were raised to be quote unquote independent. I've always said too about independence, it is something to be respected, but it has its place, just the same as dependence. You know, it's kind of like we teach our kids, or when our kids, we want them to walk, we want them to do things, but we also, when they start to walk, we follow them around to make sure they're not getting into this or doing this or that, so they still have a level of dependence. But for some odd reason, we forget that when we get older and we are in a relationship with each other, there still is a need for guidance, or, you know, hey, maybe you don't need to walk that way. It's burning over there, sweetheart. I see it. It's on fire. I know you can't see it, but I'm just telling you, hey, trust me, you know, let's walk this way instead, because there's a fire over here. And
I agree.
If you're so independent and you're so, you know, I don't need, you know, don't tell me this and that, you'll walk right into the fire. And sadly, in marriage, I'm now walking with you. But most of the time, what ends up happening is I let your hand go, and I go my way, you go your way, and then you're looking at me, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not, it's fire. I didn't want to go over there. And that's where the marriage starts to kind of dissipate. I'm going to give an illustration on that real quick.
Please.
Just imagine that the two have now split. I think you talked to me about this, I think. No, it's something I heard. The two have split, right? This woman is walking down this path. That man is walking down that path. He saw fire. Maybe she didn't see it, or maybe she saw fire. It could be the other way around. What has to happen at that time is the two have to yell in order to communicate. And most of the time in a marriage or in a relationship, when there's yelling, that means there's distance. The two,
absolutely,
they're not this way. Because of the fact, if I am with you, I don't have to scream at you to get my point across. You have to scream at me to get your point across. You can just talk to me. You just tell me, hey, sweetheart, there's fire over there. And then if I start yelling back, something's off.
That's correct.
We're not together. In some form or fashion, we're not together. Sure, we're together, right? But we're not together. That's, you know, I don't want to go too deep into that.
Oh, we can go deep. We can go into that, because listen, I completely agree with you, and I concur in that sense where we often hear that it takes a village to raise children.
Sure.
My philosophy is that it takes a village to raise people, a community. It takes a village. Children are part of a village. Husbands and wives are part of a village. Mothers and fathers are part of a village. So it's not just to the child that we have to subject the village philosophy. I'm a believer that a village, everybody is part of the village. Because when you think about the mom having that baby, that mom needs support from the village. You know, when dad is, you know, down and he's injured, he can't, you know, go out and make the bread and butter for the household, then that father needs that village. So the village is a requirement. The village is a necessity. The village is part of, I think, the blood flow of a healthy community, a healthy society. I was raised in a village, not in the village that you may think like in Africa and things like that. I mean, I'm from Colombia. I come from a beautiful country with a beautiful culture, but we were raised not on survival, but we were raised on that community village love, where my neighbors 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 houses down, if they cook dinner, I can go to anybody's house and cook and go eat dinner that was cooked, you know. And the same goes for my neighborhood, you know, peers. Anyone could come to my nanny's house, and my nanny cooked for like 40, 50 kids in the neighborhood. Why? Because the fathers of the neighborhood made sure that they came to nanny's house and asked my nanny, do you need anything? Do you need some bread? Do you need some potatoes? Do you need some fish? Whatever you need. And she always had ample food to cook enough. So I never really experienced scarcity to that sense of what I experience now. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what I mean by scarcity is that community scarcity, that lack of empathy, that lack of support from people until I came to America. And it was a culture shock, to say the least. And it has been 20 years, and I still feel as if it was 1999, the culture shock.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's really tough sometimes.
Yeah, I understand. thank God I grew up in a neighborhood kind of, it was like you were talking about. I mean, all of me and my neighbors, from what I know, oh my goodness. And the same went for if I got in trouble. Everybody knew about it. And
Everybody.
by the time I walked from the top of the road down to my house, everybody had something to say, if they cared about me. You need to chill out in school. I heard about you, da 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 da. But the thing is, like you said, if we needed something, as far as a community, we always came together, and we always made sure that family either had a meal, somebody struggling, and it was just, it was like that because we pretty much were all in the same situation.
Exactly.
We were all the same, even though we weren't all the same. We had mixed families on our on our block. We had Asian families on our block. We had I don't know if they were Colombian. I'm gonna tell you something that's funny. Maybe not that funny, but in Georgia, where I'm from, born and raised, we only.
I love Georgia.
Oh,
Georgia's a
yes.
beautiful, beautiful state. I love Georgia. I've been up there so many times. I actually was buying my first home in Georgia. I got a license. I got everything all planned out, but it was my plans, not the greater God's plans. But we got that on pause.
Okay.
Continue.
So let me tell you, in Georgia, you're white, you're black, or you're Mexican.
Wow.
We don't know
Wow.
anything else. You
Wow.
can be straight from Colombia and be like, oh, okay, she's Mexican.
But there was only 3 categories.
Yeah, it's only 3 categories in Georgia.
Amazing.
That's how sad we are. But we got better now because Atlanta became a melting pot. And I
Yes.
remember growing up, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. It wasn't like that at all. Like Georgia was like very segregated. It's either 1, 2, or 3, and that's whatever. But we had families on my block. Now I don't know. They may have been Colombian. They may have been from Venezuela. I have no idea.
That's
We always
something else that I
said,
learned. That was another culture shock for me and I shared this many times with people, that I did not know that racism until I came to the United States. I grew up in a library and I found my high school graduation photo and I showed it to my kids. And it was like, wow, mom. To them, it was like, wow, mom, like, look at all these different color people. And there was no such thing as, oh, you white, you Puerto Rican, you Latino, you Asian, you Arab. No, it was, we all one culture of people. It was the language that was, kind of echoed across the border, where we were all a culture of people. We're all from this beautiful island. We all natives, and that's how we perceived each other. It wasn't your skin color or your accent or your hair texture that made you different from me. It was more that you and I were from the same community, therefore we're part of a village. And America taught me something that was super, super difficult to deal with to this day. I still have a challenge dealing with it because my accent comes out. The longer we are talking, the quicker I begin to really have an accent. But if it's just a hi and bye, the average person sees me and has no idea that I'm Hispanic because of my skin complexion. And I still deal with that in America. In 2020, I get frowned upon, or people look at me crazy, or I just have to always say, yes, there are Black people in Latin America. Like, really?
right.
In 2020, with access to social media, as much television, as much information that it is available at the fingertips, people are still ignorant to the notion of culture. I mean, if you go to UK, there's a lot of beautiful Black people. If you go to certain parts of the world, they're a whole lot darker than me. So it is something that, again, it's just people, it's a human thing. We just learn to embrace people's ignorance as well and empower and educate. I found out that every time I came across or in contact with someone who was totally culture shocked by me, it was my moment to empower and not impose.
That is very true. And of course, I've dealt with a lot of racism growing up. We grew up in the South, so yeah, racism was a thing. It got to a point where, even the high school I went to was extremely segregated, and it wasn't legally segregated. It's just that's how we were. Those who
I can imagine that.
Right, but those who talked to another race were frowned upon. If you talked to another race, you were frowned upon. That's just kind of how it was, and sadly. when I first went off to college, um, I was culture shocked because I hadn't been around all of my race like that, like for years. You know what I'm saying? Like I shared in so many, because I was never really racist, right? I like to talk to everybody. I played sports, so my teammates, you play sports, you're gonna find athletes just being athletes, right? We all
Right.
teammates for all of this and that. And matter of fact, on my team, there was a guy who called me the N word, and I mean, we pretty much went to town on him, and he left the school, because
Wow.
we were beating on him every day. Like it was an everyday thing. We're gonna beat on you until you get it through your head. Like we don't play that, not on this team. They may do
Amazing.
that everywhere else, but on this team we don't do that. So because I had integrated myself with other cultures, I started to appreciate them. So I didn't know what it was like to just only be subject to things that are black, you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be. I,
Yeah, I get it.
you know what I mean? I just liked every culture. I liked the food. I liked the music. I liked the people. I liked everything they liked. I was like, I can grow to like this. I like this. And so when I got with around majority of African Americans, it was just tough. It was extremely tough because I had to integrate myself into being exposed to only that until I found other people. But on a majority, it wasn't that mixed. But until I started finding people who were coming from schools such as myself, who were more integrated and things of that nature,
Right.
you know what I mean, and started.
Oh, I totally get it. I
Yeah,
totally get it. I mean, over the years, my children, I think from the times I can remember, I've always enrolled my children in particularly diverse schools. I've always done my diligence to evaluate geographically what type of diverse group of people or children are in that specific neighborhood or that goes to that school. And they were always on reassignment. I've never really enrolled my children even if I lived in a predominantly black neighborhood, I always drove my children to school. I've always been their Uber. They weren't the type of kids that I would allow on the school bus. I mean, I think they rode the school bus one year and it was really traumatizing for them. They were like, Mom, there's fights on the bus and kids tease you, they steal your pencil and etc. And I did not grow up like that. So for me, I believe my parenting also came from how I was raised and how I would want my children in a completely foreign country to me, but I would want them to have a similar experience. I didn't know how to do it, so I had to find a way to create that experience. So my children always grew up in a diverse community of children in school. Even doing activities and when we travel, when we do fun things, and within my personal network of friendships, I always kept and keep diverse people around me. So my children are exposed to people that speak multiple languages, and that's how I was raised. So I find that there's still going to be a culture shock every relationship, every friendship that I make. When people think differently, you learn more. If you're always around like-minded people, it's okay to be around positive, uplifting people, but I find it more exciting to meet people who think differently, who live differently and do differently from me, because that's how I also learn. At this stage in my life, I still believe that I have not met or done everything that I can do.
I know for a fact that you haven't. I know I have not either. I mean, you're a very dynamic person, and it's been great. Not only just speaking to you, but more so listening and learning. There's things that you have said that I've put into my mental Rolodex. Even the book that you talked about,
Awesome.
the seven different levels of intimacy and things of that nature. I'm like, okay, I literally took my phone and wrote it down so I can go look it up and purchase the book. Because I mean,
I'll send you the link actually. Yeah.
oh, even better, even better. So send me the link, and then I can just go and purchase it like that. Look, that's it for me, right? As far as any questions or anything like that. But do you have anything that you want to give to us? Any gems, any diamonds that you want to leave with us before we go ahead and end the show?
Oh yeah, I would want to leave the listeners with something that every opportunity I have to, speak to a mass of people is to understand, genuinely understand who you are by simply taking the time to inventory yourself. And when you can inventory yourself, you would know what you like, you would know what you don't like. So when it comes out in other people, you can recognize it. because sometimes people really do bring out that part of us that still needs work. um, our children will do it, our spouses will do it, our colleagues, our bosses, our employees will do it. So the reality is that when you can really, have a good grip and sense of yourself, who you are, then you can truly hold on to your power. I find that when people give up their power, they do it in many, many ways. One will be an example of road rage. You know, another example is, perhaps being in the line and someone's just probably tipping you with their shopping cart and you just going off. Little things like that is moment, and immediately the reaction is such and such made me do it. You made me do it. You. And we begin to point the finger at that individual, but that situation was a mere imperfect example of an area of us that still needs due diligent work. So inventory, take your time. I mean, if you're married, you need to do diligence inventory on yourself. So does your spouse. And when you can really recognize those things that your spouse probably pinches your nerves, that's your area where you focus on becoming a better person, because that area would not go anywhere unless you work on it. It's like the soil. You're not going to expect to get fruits from a soil that's filled with thorn, that's filled with rocks. Nothing will grow from that. Not enough sunlight will get to the seeds, not enough nutrients will come from that seed because it's not in the proper soil. So we are simply like seeds. Wherever we plant ourselves, we're either going to be stagnant or we're going to grow. And everything around us are those elements and factors that helps us grow. So that would be the only thing I want to leave with the listening audience, Milton, is to do diligence on inventory on self and work on the area that you feel irritable, that you feel pricked and pulled and pinched, and you recognize that's the very tender area that still has unhealing attached to it.
Man, I tell you what, that was beautiful. That was beyond beautiful. That was awesome. That was awesome. I hope everybody picked up on everything she stated, the importance of it, and why it is so important to not just heal, but to understand that you are a seed. Wow. And what you put on yourself, either you grow or you make yourself die. Yeah, you perish. So that is, wow, that was beautiful. So look, one more time, if you could, please give us your handles. I know, we've talked, but give us your handles and let us know how we can find you so that way people can get more of these gems from you.
Absolutely. Well, I can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My first name is Sheila, Sheila, and I'm called Sheila as well, and I take it. My last name is Bryan, Bryan, and I am on all the social media platforms. I spend a lot more of my time on Facebook. I go there to do a lot of lives. I sow a lot of seeds as well with, my wisdom. I'm just grateful to also be, just anointed with some of the wisdom that I have, because I don't take it for granted. I know that the most valuable thing that we can do in this world is to speak words that will bring life to the souls of people, because we really, really have that power. And if we exercise it, then we will make a difference. We might not change everybody in the world, but one that changes one and the numbers multiply, you will never really know how beautiful your words can really land on someone that can repeat it, regurgitate it into someone else. And that's the law and the power of numbers.
Amen to that. Amen, amen, and amen.
We just went to church, huh?
Yeah, amen, amen, and amen again.
It's been a pleasure, Milton. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and allowing me to even take your time. Trust me, I appreciate it. Thank you for working with me through the technical difficulties and other things that came up.
Oh, it happens. It happens. Thank you so much. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to doing, another podcast with you, another topic, and, just really empower the people, uplift the people, and most importantly, educate people.
Yes. Education is the best thing. So I'm going to sign off. It's Milton Spence, your owner and founder of Well-Rounded Consulting. Once again, with Ms. Sheila Bryan. I hope you heard all the ways you can not only get in touch with her, but be able to get some more of these gems and get some more of this drip. So look, what I'm gonna also do is place her information in the description, so you'll be able to find it on every platform that we're on. That's whether it be from Apple to Spotify to Facebook, wherever we are, the Well Rounded Coach's Corner, you'll be able to find Miss Sheila Bryan, and you guys can go on and talk with her and be able to hopefully become a client of hers.
That would be nice.
There
I
you
welcome
go.
all clients.
There you go. So look, this is the Coach's Corner, Milton Spence. I'm signing off.